It's showtime, folks. Enjoy the show.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you today, Steve?
I'm wide awake, and it's been a while. It's like I needed a couple weeks to just sleep in on the weekends to get ready for doing this again.
Yeah, you've had a few weeks, huh?
Yes.
Well, you should be well rested.
I am well rested and wide awake. I'm actually doing a little outdoor casting. It's a wee bit chilly, but it's still nice to be outside because it's not like freezing. So I'm enjoying the outside morning, and that's helping me stay wide awake this morning.
Last night we had the big winter carnival out here where I am, and it was so balmy outside. Like in past years, we're all freezing. We've got our coats. We're like bundled up. We're just chilly. Last night, I had my coat wrapped around my waist because it was too hot to wear that. I had my sleeves pushed up because it was too hot for long sleeves. I'm like, this is crazy. It's like flipping December, and here I am, like, pretty much short sleeves, walking around enjoying the winter festival.
Yes.
Didn't feel very wintry.
No, it's just, No, that's Arizona. Yes.
That is Arizona.
But, it's overcast and cloudy, which is making it a little bit chillier, but like Thanksgiving, it was like 85, 86 degrees. So gotta enjoy it while I can.
There you go. There you go. Welcome to the Saturday Matinee, everybody. For those of you who are our Patreon supporters, we appreciate you. Thank you for supporting us. And so Steve, let's. What do you want to do first? Should we kick off with just some news of the week and such?
That sounds like a good plan because Pete's not here, and we can run this show however we want.
We could do the whole thing backward if we wanted. He couldn't
That's
stop
it.
us.
Let's do the lists first. No, let's do the news of the week.
All right. So this week it's been, with what's been opening at the box office, like Coco and Justice League, it's been a pretty slow week as far as big movies opening. Although over at the numbers, they say, it's actually an incredibly busy week with about 30 films coming out this week, which seems like a crazy amount. But it says, however, the vast majority of them have too few reviews to be worth talking about. In fact, there would have been more entries in the secondary VOD than the main list, except, they kind of bent the rules. Here are the releases that they say are worth talking about. And they say, if you're going to do anything, skip some of these big, terrible movies that are playing out there. Go see a limited release this week. Movies like The Disaster Artist, The Shape of Water, and A Bad Idea Gone Wrong. So those are some movies that they say are worth checking out. So it's interesting, with the system as it is right now, and being able to kind of watch VOD, it gives us a lot more maybe better options to look at, I guess. Yeah,
no, I think that this time of year, you get some of those big movies that dominate the weekend, but there's a lot of nice, smaller films. And I'm really fortunate because my birthday's in late November. So last year I got out and I do a little binge. And last year it was Manchester by the Sea and Loving. This year it was 3 Billboards Outside Ebbings, Missouri, and Ladybird. And it's like, I love that those movies that are smaller get at least a wide enough release, at least a chance where I get to see them, because usually then I can get into the theater because everybody's cramming into whatever the big, holiday releases are. And I think it gives people more opportunities here. And I love that there's these smaller films. I'm looking forward to The Shape of Water, hoping to get out to see that soon. But the holidays get so busy. That's the one thing I regret is if you can't find it, if you don't get out and see it during that like first or second week, a lot of times they end up disappearing.
Yeah.
Disaster Artist, I'm still super torn about that one because it looks funny, but the side of me is like, oh man, this is like, I don't know, sort of like exploitative of like, let's mock this guy. And I know that's not the intent of the film, and it's about the creative process and passionate artists making things. But I still feel like, hey, we're just making fun of this guy that made this bad movie.
Yeah, maybe. I'm very curious about that one. Like, is it going to fall into that, or is it going to be like an honest, kind of passionate portrayal of somebody who's just passionate, no matter the fact that they may not actually be qualified to deliver a good end product. Kind of like Ed Wood. I mean, Ed Wood, I thought was a great story about just somebody who's really passionate about cinematic storytelling, who just happens to be really bad at it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's that's what I'm hoping for, is that, people can have a train wreck of a project, and you can tell that story about it and find the humanity in it of that artist that has that passion for something that just doesn't quite match with what the world expects of a quality project. So I'm, it's on my list that maybe I'll get out to see. I don't know. Because I haven't seen the Room, and that's one of those where I'm like, I don't know if I should wait and watch The Room and then do Disaster Artist. Maybe do it as a double feature. I don't know.
I don't know if anyone really has to watch The Room. I've never watched it. I've only seen like the highlight reels that are all over YouTube of all like the best / worst scenes, and it's hilarious. I mean, it's so bad. It just it makes me laugh just to watch it. And the fact that the Disaster Artist got made, I think is pretty funny. And just watching it, I mean, it looks like they really captured Tommy Wiseau. So
yes.
I think I'm really curious about it. And I guess my question is, because I mean, you go to the movie theaters now and they've got like the giant Disaster Artist standee where they've got the Tommy Wiseau life-size, character right there. And you can stand and get your picture with him and stuff. I'm like, are many people like, who are they marketing this to? Because I don't know if like my in-laws are going to see it. Like there's a lot of people I'm like, I don't think that they're, I don't know. I'm curious who their audience is, but regardless, I'm curious about it. I want to see it. I'm glad that it's getting mostly positive reviews. So I'm curious about that. Yeah. And speaking of positive reviews, what about Ladybird?
Oh man, Ladybird. Yes. Oh, I'm so glad I got a chance to see it. I haven't seen
it, but
no, the big news this week was that it became the best reviewed movie on Rotten Tomatoes, dethroning Toy Story 2, which
I thought it was Toy Story 3.
Or was it Toy Story 3?
Yeah.
I know it was one of the Toy Stories, but I sort of attribute that to the fact that, it's however many years later, like 10 years later or whatever, you've just got, I think, a larger pool of critics in Rotten Tomatoes, because I think it attained that status because of the 100% fresh rating based on how many reviews. And so I think it, outpaced by a few. It's like 160 something reviews that are fresh. So as Rotten Tomatoes continues to broaden the number of, or increase the number of critics that they're allowing in their system, eventually, yes, this was going to happen. But to get, that many positive reviews, I think is great, especially for a small film like this. It's a really enjoyable film. I had a great time with it. For anybody that's a mother or a daughter, it's definitely a story I think you need to see. For my family, it's maybe a little close to home because I've got 2 teenagers. I've got one about to leave for college, next summer.
Yeah.
So a little bit close to home. So I'm not quite sure it's the perfect thing for my wife and daughters to see right now, because I'm afraid they'd come home just emotional wrecks of just the tears. And I don't know that I want to put them in that position, but it just, oh my gosh, Greta Gerwig, I'm so excited to see what she does as a filmmaker. This is an amazing story. And I'm glad it's getting this type of attention, because it's these smaller films that are really about characters that I think people need to keep seeing and supporting.
Yeah.
No more big special effects and booms, just, a family and heart. And, Laurie Metcalf and Tracy Letts as the parents. Oh, just such a great film.
I'm really excited to see that one. I'm glad it's getting such positive reviews. My wife was just like, I don't know if I want to watch that one. I feel like it's going to depress me. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not really sure what the tone of the movie is. I don't know if it's going to be one that you come out like depressed about, your family relationships or what, but
it depends on the nature of your relationship with your parents. Yeah. Cause like I said, for some people it may just be, when I went and saw it with my brother, it was really interesting because there was like a mother and daughter behind us, and Lady Bird takes place in Sacramento, and her big thing is she's just dying to get out of Sacramento. She wants to go someplace, get out of California, get out of Sacramento. Sacramento is like the worst place. And I guess this family, their daughter, I guess were from Sacramento, because they were afterwards talking about, recognizing a lot of the locations, and it apparently touched them. They just sort of hung around during the credits and just kept having a conversation about them and family and that city. So I think some people are going to connect a lot with it. For me, it's, I found it just a really entertaining story, sort of that coming of age story of asserting yourself as a teenager and trying to establish your own identity and wanting to, leave the nest and move on, and the challenges with that. So I think it just hits, it's structured and written in a way that it will appeal to, I think anybody can find a way to be connected to this story, whether on a deeply personal level or just as enjoying a great story about some great characters.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait. It's definitely on my list. And I just feel like it's one of those smaller films that's going to grow bigger and bigger. And I mean, it's already playing at like every theater I look at. So it's clearly one that's able to break outside of that limited indie release into something that I think is going to have a more broad appeal. So I'm looking forward to seeing that one talked about by more people as the weeks progress. I guess that's it. So let's start talking trailers.
We can talk trailers.
Let's do it. Which one? Who do you want to? Neither of us have the red band.
Nobody's got a red band.
There's no A24. So
what do we do? Well, you've got. I'm revisiting something. So
true.
So do you get to go because yours is new and mine is old and boring?
I'll take that as a sure.
Okay.
Why not? I did think it was interesting that neither of us picked Avengers Infinity War, but maybe that's just my kindness to you so you don't have to go and watch it.
Thank you.
Although I will, all I'm going to say about that one is I watched the trailer, I'm like, okay. It really didn't excite me as much as I was kind of hoping.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens with that as more and more trailers come out, as inevitably they will.
Yeah.
But that is not my trailer, as I said. My trailer is for a film, I was looking for trailers and I was like really bummed because there were just a lot of really bad trailers and things. I was like, the last thing I want to talk about is that movie. And then I came across this one, which popped up, and it's called Love, Simon. And what piqued my curiosity about this is it's a story about a high school kid who is kind of going through his own personal crisis because he's gay and he hasn't come out, and he's dealing with kind of falling for this guy at school and stuff. And it sounds like an interesting story. And then I'm like, but this is like 20th Century Fox. I'm like, it seems, and maybe I'm wrong, but to me it seemed like, is this like the first like big studio like high school romantic drama that is about a gay kid? And I was like, that's actually pretty interesting. I don't know if that's true or not. Certainly you can go back to something like In and Out, where it's like an adult gay story coming out. But still, I was like, this might be a sign of kind of progress, I guess you could say, as we start getting more interesting stories about gay characters or other types of characters. And it made me happy to kind of watch this trailer and see that here's this story about this kid who's just, a typical high school kid, and he just happens to be dealing with this fact that he's gay, and he's kind of trying to figure out how to deal with that. Greg Berlanti is directing it. It's got the kid's name is Nick Robinson, who plays Simon, and he was fantastic in Jurassic World as the older brother. He was also fantastic in The Kings of Summer. And he's just one of those guys who has a nice screen presence, and I kind of foresee a nice career for him. I think that he really brings a lot to the screen. And his parents, Jennifer Garner and Josh Duhamel, I think they there's not a ton of them in the trailer, but I think it's a great pair for them to be playing his parents. It really kind of struck me as like, I don't know if it's going to be that unique of a story other than the fact that it's this big studio film about a gay kid. So what'd you think?
Yeah, no, I had the same feeling about that, where I'm watching this, I go, wow, this is just, being presented as typical sort of like teen, high school teen, coming of age, figuring out yourself story, just, for an audience that, or a kid that we don't typically see a story about these kids. They're usually the comic relief sidekick in the story. And so to really tackle this head on and say, okay, here's Simon, here's his story. This is what his struggle is. I'm really happy to see a movie like this because there's an audience for this out there. I always enjoy seeing films about teenagers that are not the typical teen, because it reminds me of several years ago when Akeelah and the Bee came out, and I saw it here at the Phoenix Film Festival, and the director was talking about it, and people said, why'd you write this story? And he said, because when you're a, white male kid, everything happens to you. You get to go to Hogwarts. E.T. lands in your backyard. Your dad brings home a gremlin. You've got a group of friends, going on adventures, to find pirate treasure. He's like, African-American girls, they're never the main character. There's never a story about them for them. And to me, this falls into that category of, okay, gay teen trying to figure himself out. We've never seen that story told from this side of major studio. It's maybe smaller indie films, but to have something that's, I don't want to say family friendly, but I think, yes, that's probably the way I see this, is maybe a more sanitized version, but something that can get people to sit down and have conversations and talk about it. And I think the interesting point of the trailer is the last part where he says, why is coming out a thing that gay kids have to do? Why don't straight kids have to do this too? And it's got a little montage of parents, kids sitting down saying, Mom, I'm heterosexual. And oh my goodness, what do you mean? Interesting perspective to get people to talk about it. I think it's been time for this to happen, to bring this out, to make it part of the public conversation. And that's the place that I think teens need that voice. And hopefully this film can be one of those things to help them have that.
Well, it looks like this is going to be released here in the U.S. March 16th. It's doesn't have a huge release outside of the U.S. yet, but Hungary, the Netherlands, UK, Sweden, France, Singapore, Germany, they're all getting it sometime between March 15th and March 29th. So there you go. Love, Simon.
I'm revisiting Thoroughbreds, which I brought back in middle or late October. It was sort of the teaser. And mostly because I'm still mourning the loss of Anton Yelchin, but I think it just had an interesting cast. So we got a full trailer for this one now, which gives us a lot more about these two teenagers, Anna Taylor-Joy and Olivia Cooke. We get a little bit of information about them, that Olivia Cooke plays Amanda, a girl who has no feelings. She's dead inside. Whereas her friend Lily, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, feels everything. And we see that the basic story is I hate my parents, help me kill my dad. He's a horrible stepdad. He's a horrible, horrible person. Let's recruit this sketchy guy played by Anton Yelchin. And it's just the tone of this film that I feel like we get a little bit more of the black comedy that's inherent in this type of story, that we're going to go hilarious, we're going to go dark, which I think is the other side of being a teenager. Whereas with Love, Simon, you've got the struggles of being a teen and tackling, realistic issues, versus the other side where I think teenagers can have those just extreme emotional reactions to things where the littlest thing becomes the end of the world. And to take that in a black comedy, which is like, I hate my stepdad. Hey, let's plot to kill him, which hopefully is not something that typical teens are doing, but it gives us a story to sort of give them an outlet for those feelings, and to just take it to the ridiculous. And so I was just thrilled to see that as I got more of the story, these characters, I'm getting more about them. I'm still looking forward to this so much, and to see it marketed as, connection to, like, it's American Psycho meets Heathers. That's a niche film I'm really dying to see.
I was surprised that it didn't also throw Heavenly Creatures into the mix, because
True.
it certainly has that feel too, of the two young girls who kind of, in between the two of them, kind of create this world amongst themselves where all of a sudden, yes, we got to murder him, let's recruit this guy. It totally takes that tone, but it's definitely the more comedic streak of it. And I'm so interested in this film and what it's going to do and where it's going to go. I love the look of it. I love the comedy, the way that it plays the comedy throughout the trailers. I just think it's a really sharp comedy, and it makes me excited. Corey Finley, I can't remember what else Corey Finley has done, but
this is his first feature film.
Yeah, which is crazy to me. So I'm really curious to see how this turns out, and then where he goes from here, because it just looks bonkers and bananas in all the best ways.
Yeah. So March 9th, 2018 release. See, I'm in a position where I have to start asking questions such as, is this a film I see with my kids? You are clearly not in a place where you're taking your kids to
Definitely
see this movie.
not.
But I've got 2 teenagers. So something where I see a film and say, I want to see this. If they see the trailer, like, oh, we want to see this. And I think, I don't know that I'm comfortable sitting down and watching this movie with you. Maybe I'll sit a few rows behind you and we won't talk about it afterwards. But that's the challenge I'm finding with films like this, where my kids love, sort of odd, small, independent films like this sometimes, but it's not a film you watch with your parents. And I'm feeling old now of like, cause I remember seeing some films like you see them with your friends when you're in high school and it's like, yes, I really connect with this. And you do not talk to your parents about this. Like you cannot, as a kid growing up, they sit down and talk to your parents about how the Breakfast Club makes you feel. That's just not something that you do. At least not in my house, right? So
there are things that don't get discussed.
Yes, those spheres do not intersect. So, and I'm feeling like, unfortunately, I would love to share the movie going experience with my kids, but I also want to respect their space as teenagers. Although I may want to have a conversation afterwards to make sure they are not secretly plotting to kill me after seeing this movie.
Yes, that's an important thing to confirm. Although I think in your case, you're probably fine.
I sure hope so.
That's right. Awesome. Well, that looks fantastic. Yeah. Definitely a pair of interesting movies that I think are worth checking out. All right. Well, should we get into the lists?
Yes. Well, let's list it up.
So this week we talked about Labyrinth, our listener's choice episode on the show. And with that, we thought it would be nice to talk about other films that feature puppets on our Saturday matinee list as kind of a nod to the great puppeteering that Jim Henson and his team did in Labyrinth. And so you've got your list of films with puppets, not including Yoda, and definitely not Meet the Feebles, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Then I'm going to be generous and I'm going to let you kick it off.
Oh, okay. So I thought a long time about this, and I started to get pigeonholed into movies that were about puppetry, or which the puppetry was part of the story. And then I realized, no. I can broaden this to, Labyrinth, which is puppets are characters in the story. Cause I was starting to think like, oh, where's how many movies are there about puppeteers and puppets as, puppets within the movie? And my wife looked at me and said, no, you're going to lose so many great things if you do that. So I had a long list and I was trying to figure out, do I take some things and that everybody's going to know, or do I go more obscure? So I'm not going to take some things that I think are really obvious and try to get to more sort of fringe things. So my first one, because I just started, it's available on Hulu and I just started rewatching it a couple of weeks ago. Just wanted to see some humorous clips of Team America World Police from 2004, which is all puppets, sort of in that Thunderbirds Are Go type of puppetry. And I think just in the political climate we're in today, it's nice to go back to 2004 to just see political satire with puppets in an R-rated format where there's blood, gore, sex, all kinds of inappropriate puppetry things going on.
And some pretty kinky sex too.
Kinky sex and Matt Damon as a puppet. That's my first pick is your good old South Park guys bringing you Team America World Police.
Fantastic one. Yeah, the marionettes in that one was a pretty genius way to do this story. It's definitely R-rated, hardcore, but boy, is it a fun one to watch. Awesome. I really I had that on my list as one of my backups, so I don't have to talk about that one now. So my first one, I was really torn on the just what I was going to do, like pick some of my great ones. I didn't want to end up with just all Jim Henson movies.
Right. Yeah.
So the first one that I'm going with, actually, it's a movie from this year, which is largely has nothing to do with puppets, but I think that's what is so novel about it is just the way that the film is told, and the fact that it ends up even incorporating puppetry into it, I think is pretty genius. The movie is David Soren's Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. I saw this movie with my kids and instantly fell in love with it. I thought it was just so well told, such interesting characters, beautiful design. Everything about it was really fantastic. Beautiful CG. The whole thing just had a really nice tone. I've never read any of the books, but it seemed, from what I've seen of the covers of them, it seemed to kind of fit what they were going for there. The reason this is on my list is because there's this really cute moment. The story is set up with our two protagonist kids that are George and Harold, played by Kevin Hart and Thomas Middleditch, who are these little fourth grade kids writing these comics, and they're kind of troublemakers in their school. And the principal, Principal Krupp, played by Ed Helms, is always trying to catch them in the act, but never is able to. And until this one moment where he's, with the help of another student, sets up this nanny cam inside this little toy turtle and catches them in the act. And then, so there's this great moment where he shows them the footage and he says, "I'm going to do the worst thing to you that I could ever do. I'm going to separate you. You're going to be in separate classes." And in the world of fourth graders, it's like that's the worst thing that could happen, because these kids is just like, I can't believe we'll never see each other again. And we cut to them in their treehouse, and Harold kind of pictures their future where they're never going to be together again. And he lifts his hands up and they have socks on his hands. And then it cuts to this fantastic sequence in his head as he's describing it of their future. And the two of them are little sock puppets. And he's just like, we won't see each other. Next thing you know, we'll be at the mall and we'll be passing each other, and you'll have a different haircut, and I'll be wearing a suit for some reason. And see these little sock puppets with their little button eyes looking at each other. Hi, hello, who are you again? And then all of a sudden, and then there will be robots. And he's like, why are there robots? I don't know. It's the future. I don't know what's going on. And it turns into this strange little sequence that is just like this fantasy of what their future apart is going to be like, all done in sock puppets and puppetry. It's a wonderful little moment in the middle of this otherwise CG film, but I wanted to include that on the list because I just thought it was a great little use of puppets.
I may just have to check out the movie for that. It's not something that's high on my list, but now I may have to just find some time over the holiday break to Captain Underpants.
It's well worth it.
Okay.
It's so much better than I ever would have expected. I think it's actually still in my top 10 for the year,
wow.
Which I don't know if that says about what I've seen this year, but it's I think it's a really great film.
So my next puppet related film starts on the 23rd day of the month of September, in an early year of a decade not too long before our own. The human race suddenly encountered a deadly threat to its very existence, and this terrifying enemy surfaced as such enemies do in the seemingly most innocent and unlikely of places. You know what I'm talking about? 1980.
Oh, I do.
1986,
yes, I do.
Little Shop of Horrors, the Audrey plant, the puppetry involved in bringing that villain to life still astounds me to this day. I think that's something you and Pete talked about in, Labyrinth, about the practical effects, and that just brings something different to these films where, nowadays you could just CG in this huge talking plant, but having that physical presence there, with the way some of these effects are done with the puppets, just, creates a different sense. It just something more tangible, real to it, knowing that is there. To see Rick Moranis having conversations, and just the way they're able to articulate the mouth and the expression in the Audrey plant, to me is just amazing. And the different versions that we get as Audrey starts as a little seedling, and grows to be large. And then if you look online to find the original ending, where it's the much darker ending, I think, where Audrey becomes like the size of a building.
They've released it now. The directors
the
with the original ending stuff there.
Of all the miniature work they had to do with all of that. To me, it's still one of my favorite musicals. And as soon as I heard puppets, I thought, this has got to be on the list, because I don't think you guys have talked about this one that I recall.
We have not.
And it's just something that I just am surprised at how well it's held up over time. I think I watched it last year with my kids, because I said, here's a musical you haven't seen. And they looked at me like, what are you doing to us? And ended up having a great time with it.
It's such a great movie. I love it. And actually we didn't even mention it on our Labyrinth show, but the reason, well, I don't know if it's the reason specifically, but Frank Oz, he does play a character in Labyrinth, but just one character, and it's a very short scene. It's the wise man sitting there with the talking bird hat. And I think that he probably didn't have much more to do with Labyrinth because he was directing this the same year.
Yeah.
This is just a fantastic film. The way they did the puppetry really blows my mind. They actually figured out that if they filmed the puppet at a slower frame rate of like 12 or 16 frames per second, it made the lips move faster and it looked a lot better with a fast talking puppet. And there were even scenes where the plant is with Rick Moranis in the same shot. And Rick had to kind of pantomime and do his lip syncing in slow motion so that when they sped it up, it looked accurate. It's like mind-boggling the things that they would work together to put all this together. And I know at one point, I think the final part when Audrey 2 grows really big, it took 60 technicians to operate her, and she was a 1-ton puppet at that point.
Yes.
Awesome. That's a fantastic film. Great choice. It was on my list, but I have since crossed it off. My next one that I'm going with is a film that I don't think you think of in terms of puppets, but the puppetry in it is pretty top notch. And I think the reason that you don't think of the puppetry so much is because the amount of the development that they did for the CG within the film was so high end that that's really kind of what people talk about. But really, it's the blending of the two that I think make this film perfect, and that is Jurassic Park. The way that Phil Tippett's puppetry in here comes out is really just spectacular, and you don't necessarily think of it as a puppet. Stan Winston is who I meant. You don't think of it as a puppet film because the CG dinosaurs were so good and so scary. But you look at the little Dilophosaurus when he's like spitting at what's his name? Yeah. I'm forgetting his character's name, but like that little puppet that you've got that fantastic giant the Brachiosaurus head that comes up and sniffs them and sneezes on them and everything. And the Triceratops, the giant puppet of the Triceratops that's laying there. That was operated by 8 puppeteers out on the in Hawaii when they were filming that. I just think that they did some amazing puppetry work. I don't know if the T-Rex, I don't know if it's fair to call the giant animatronic T-Rex that they built a puppet. I mean, I guess you kind of could call it a puppet, although it's more just like a big animatronic thing. But the specific puppets that they did here to kind of help build this entire world are pretty amazing. So that's my number 2, Jurassic Park.
It's interesting that you picked that one because I have a related fun fact that connects your pick to my next pick.
Oh,
yes. So in searching puppet stuff, I actually came across, and I did not know that there is a website, stanwinstonschool.com. And this is where I found some video footage and some facts here about my film and the puppet that is there. So talking about Jurassic Park, so they're talking about in terms of what I'm going to tell you about, that I'm going to keep secret for right now. But in this film, they built a more sophisticated and complex animatronic than any of the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. It required increased manpower plus the ingenuity and talent of many artists and technicians. Quote, "We'd given our Velociraptor 34 points of motion," explained Winston, "and our T-Rex 40 points of motion. But this one had 50 points of motion, all in a little character that was less than 3 feet tall. He had to act, he had to talk, and he had to deliver a varied and convincing performance. We had to create the ultimate robotic teddy bear, and that was the biggest, most difficult job we'd ever taken on." I'm talking about Teddy, the little robot teddy bear from AI, which I know is a controversial film. It's I hate to say it's a guilty pleasure because I don't feel guilty about loving this film. But 2001, this animatronic teddy bear, we weren't at a CG point really to pull this off. And the way this thing moves and talks and expresses itself just blew me away in this film. He's my
interesting.
Yes.
That's one that for some reason I didn't even think about. I forgot that that teddy bear was largely a puppet. So that's a pretty interesting one to bring up. It's a film that I think I have a lot of story issues with, namely in the last half hour. But I feel there's a lot of good stuff in the film, even though I get very frustrated with some of the things. Like I brought up at one point, the Robin Williams.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Character.
Yes. Yes.
So silly. So silly.
I agree. I have quibbles. I will admit, I have quibbles with the film. That is not perfect. I think it's a film that I love, but yes, it at some points frustrates me because I see such potential and some decisions that were made that I just thought, no, make this an enduring piece that lasts all of time. The Robin Williams, it's so of its time at that point that it was like sort of that appeal to, hey, here's our popcorn audience for 2001. Here's a little something for you, as opposed to telling a story that will still be relevant and meaningful, 20 years from now, instead of like, oh, that's sort of an archaic joke. That makes it feel dated.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Yes.
They
Sure.
had a hard time finding that line.
Right.
Fantastic. Well, for my final pick, I felt a little guilty not doing any Jim Henson on here, so I had to throw something on here, and I was really torn what to go with. Do I go with Muppets or do I go with this is what I'm going to go with. It's a much darker one. We've definitely talked about it on our Labyrinth episode, and it is, of course, The Dark Crystal from 1982. A really interesting fantasy film that Jim Henson and Frank Oz co-directed. That is such a unique world that they created in this film that I think it's hard to it's a little tough for kids, but at the same time, it's such a fully realized world that it's a fascinating film to revisit. Yes, I feel like it may have some pacing issues, but Brian Froud, again from Labyrinth, did a great job with kind of just conceptualizing this whole world. And you've got the really creepy characters, the Skeksis. You've got the I'm trying to remember what the Garthim. You've got Jen and Kira, the two last of whatever race they are. You've got Fizzgig, the little kind of furball dog thing that I still feel is like every Shih Tzu I see, I think of Fizzgig.
Yes.
You've got the fantastic Aughra, the lady who can pull her eyeball out and look around. Really, really unique characters in this fantasy, this dark fantasy world that I've always just been drawn to. I just think it's such an interesting film. My kids still love watching it. It's really unique. And I think they marketed this, and I think it might be true where, it billed as the first live action film without any human beings on screen. It's all puppets, and you've got, animatronic puppets. You've got kind of the typical kind where it's like, just the stick performances and everything. You've got the big puppets where people are inside the costumes. Just like there are so many different kinds of puppets all through this. It's a really unique world. So that is my final pick. It is The Dark Crystal, and it's definitely a unique one worth looking at.
Oh, that was on my list. That was one where I thought I have to make sure we mention this. I know you talked about it on the Labyrinth episode, so I sort of put it to the side. But oh my God, I remember seeing this in the theater and just being knocked off my seat by this amazing world that was created. And I'm cautiously optimistic about the Netflix series, The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, that's coming next year, which apparently is sort of a prequel story. But yeah, I mean, they did just the world building that went into this to me, the 80s, there were so many films that just took what was in kids' imaginations and put it on the screen in a way that we just don't see anymore. And this was one of those, it is often talked about it being dark and scary, but to me, when you're a young kid, it's like fairy tales are dark and scary. I mean, you get away from the Disney side of things, and there's kids struggle and grapple with, these big issues that have, darker undertones sometimes, and to have it done in this way, oh my gosh. Yeah. Just one of those great films that, I'm hoping, again, as we had the whole Blade Runner thing this year of let's go back to the early 80s and revisit something. How successfully can they do that? Because there's just so much, I guess, emotional baggage that people have connected to this film, that can it live up to the expectations, since it's been 35 years of Dark Crystal being there, its own thing, and just collecting so much meaning for everyone to go back to that world is a big risk, but one that I hope pays off.
And I did say the Garthim were the other ones, but it's actually the Mystics. The Garthim are the giant, like, beetle creatures.
Oh,
that
yeah.
That the Skeksis use to go catch the podlings and chase the gelflings. So anyway, fantastic lists. A lot of really interesting puppet films for people to go look at. And gosh, what are we going to do next week? So we're kicking off the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or kicking off the Millennium Trilogy with the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. What's a good one? Films prominently featuring tattoos?
No,
not quite sure that's a. Oh man, it's okay. So that one, it's funny. I just rewatched it, and I'm like, okay, that definitely fit with our cold case list that we did a few weeks back with Secret in Their Eyes. But there's got to be something else that we can pull from that film that I think would be definitely worth talking about on the show.
Oh, there's so many things, because do you get into? I mean, you can get into more general things of like foreign films that have been Americanized, because you have,
Oh, that's kind of an interesting one. Yeah.
There are some that are more successful than. There's always that attempt to take sort of an international, success, something that's just been a blockbuster over there, and say, well, we need to do this for American audiences, but they don't like to read subtitles or don't like foreign films, so we'll have to do an American version of this. Because that was something that sometimes it just bothers me, and it's like, oh, we like your story, but no offense, we have to, do it differently for us in America because we're special, and
right.
we can't, handle the way you guys do it. We're going to do it better, and it rarely lives up to that. Because I haven't seen, this, the Millennium Trilogy. I've heard great things about it. I'm looking at getting into them, but that's the thing that I always think about when I think of this movie is, oh, it's that one that we had to redo, or because we can't get into cold cases. I mean, you can get into she's sort of like Elizabeth's sort of like a hacker. You could get into that, hacker crime stuff, but I don't know that that's a large enough pool of movies to generate a list out of.
We could talk about hackers.
Yes. Oh,
maybe we shouldn't go that route.
No.
I like the direction that you're going. Let's do that. Where are we doing foreign films that have, for better or worse, been remade into American films?
Okay.
That's I think a pretty interesting list that will bring up some interesting films and maybe spur some people on to go watch some foreign films.
Yeah, hopefully maybe some people have some favorite films and they'll discover that, oh, there is a better foreign version of that film. Maybe.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, right.
All right.
Good. We've got a good list. So let's put that together for next week. Okay. And otherwise, I think that's it. So to all our Patreon supporters, again, thank you. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. And glad you're able to tune in to us on this Saturday matinee. And until next week, have a great week. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Andy.
And we'll chat next time.